Good afternoon everybody. Great to see you. Thank you for being here at relatively short notice. Well. It's fair to say that in just 2 weeks we have turned what looked like being the most boring general election campaign since any of us could remember to the most interesting and extraordinary campaign. 2 weeks ago, everyone was writing Reform UK off, thought the big squeeze would be happening. But actually, we were talking about what millions and millions of people up and down the country wanted to talk about. And that's the population increase. That's why we're getting poorer. It's about immigration. That's what ordinary folk want to talk about. But of course, the main parties didn't want to talk about that. And in that first week of the campaign, we held in the polls as everyone thought we would disappear downwards. And then a week last Monday, Nigel joined the campaign big time. And we've been heading north in the polls. And it's quite extraordinary. I'm loving being out campaigning. And what's remarkable is what's happening out there, up and down the country. The noise, the activity. The word is spreading like something we've never known before. I'm loving getting messages from all over the country, from people I haven't heard of for ages. Have you heard this? The whole pub's talking about it. The pub came out, people came out from the pub when there was a Reform candidate and cheered and clapped. The fact that there's a sign on a bridge on the M6 saying vote Reform is also pretty extraordinary, but it's just indicative of the enthusiasm for something else apart from the boring status quo of the main two parties, for whom, frankly, there is not a jot of difference. They both stand for higher taxes. They're sort of competing in these debates. Who's going to raise taxes more than the other? Something is significant and going on out there. But what no one expected, no one really believed could possibly actually happen. As we went up in the polls and the Conservatives started to slide in the polls. How far could they slide? Well, that was the question. How far could we go up? Could we get equal to them in certain areas? Could we get equal to them nationally? No one expected within less than 2 weeks, in fact, less than 12 days, we wouldn't bother with equaling in the polls. No, we would leapfrog them in the polls, using the Rolls-Royce of pollsters, no less. So last night, just a few minutes before the seven-way leaders debate, there it was. Everywhere across the whole of the media, that Reform UK was 1% ahead of the Conservatives in the polls. Now, if that, folks, is not momentum, if that is not activity, I don't know what is. And so we're upsetting all the right people. At the beginning of this week, of course, we upset the banking industry. From the press conference we gave on Monday, we talked about how actually the truth is that the big banks, the Bank of England, are ripping off taxpayers. You know you're making progress when the big banks' lobby groups start to attack us. And that is because Reform UK is on the side of ordinary working folk. And it's pretty clear that we're the only party that is. That's why we're going up in the polls. That's why everybody's talking about us. That's why we've got the momentum, the noise, the activity. It is truly, truly remarkable. That's why we're holding this press conference following that last night, so that we can hear from the leader of Reform UK, and then you can ask some questions. So I'm delighted to welcome to the lectern, the podium, my good friend, leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage.
Well, good morning, everybody. The last time we had a little press conference in London, it was on Monday, and I said to you, something is happening out there. There is a momentum behind what Reform UK are doing. And of course, there's always a lag time between understanding what's happening on the ground and seeing it playing out in the polls. I also told you that some of the polling industry were acting entirely dishonestly, and I'm pleased to say, as a result of my letter to the chair of the British Polling Council, they have been told now they really ought to be prompting for reform. So they're all playing catch-up. I also said 3 or 4 weeks ago that I thought Reform would get more votes in this general election than the Conservative Party, and I absolutely believe that now to be the case. So yes, it was a delight last night to see that the inflection point has arrived. The momentum that Richard and I are seeing on the streets and on the doors is now filtering through, and we are 1 point ahead of the Conservatives. But just bear this in mind. We are well ahead of the Conservatives in the North East, in the North West, in Yorkshire and the Humber, in the East Midlands, in the West Midlands, and in parts of Eastern Region. And in what we all call the red wall seats, we are significantly ahead of the Conservatives. And so I think Penny Mordaunt was a little bit shocked last night on the ITV debate. I don't think she had a very good evening, really, all round, because they're still pumping out the same line, that if you vote for Reform, you will get Labour. But the inflection point means that actually, if you vote Conservative in the red wall, you will almost certainly get Labour. A Conservative vote in the red wall is now a wasted vote. We are the challengers to Labour. We are now the real opposition. And this needs to be reflected. As I said, it's beginning to be reflected by the polling industry, but it needs to be reflected by the broadcasters as well, because Ofcom, on the guidance they've given to broadcasters, say that really the most important of all the factors is the performance in the last 2 general elections. We haven't stood in the last 2 general elections. It's as if everything about our politics is designed to stop new boys and girls coming in and to keep everything the same. At the moment, broadcasters are giving our party 8% of their coverage, which clearly is nowhere near in line with where we actually are. But there's something else I want to ask for today. The BBC will be having a leaders' debate, a 4-way leaders' debate with the leader of the Liberal Democrats, the Conservatives, Labour and the SNP, and that takes place next week. And I think we can demand of right now that the BBC put us into that debate. I would also very much like to do a debate head-to-head with Keir Starmer. And the reason is very simple. We think that this should be the immigration election, because whether we're talking about rents, whether we're talking about housing availability, whether we're talking about access to GP services, whether we're talking about pressure on infrastructure, there is no aspect of our national life that is not touched by the massive population crisis this country now faces, directly as a result of immigration policies that were started by Labour but accelerated by this Conservative government. And I thought it was very interesting to see the Labour manifesto, where Keir Starmer lays out his 6 priorities for the country. And not one of those 6 was mass migration into Britain. So we're very much of the view that nothing will change under Labour. Who knows? It may even get a little bit worse. I would love, as I'm now the leader of the opposition, I would now love Well, I thought that was fairly obvious to everybody. I would love to do a head-to-head with Keir Starmer to ask him, why? Why, if you're going out looking for the working people of Britain to vote for you, have you not put this in your top 6 priorities? What is for certain, people are beginning to realise this, is the election is over. Labour have won. It's merely a debate about the size of their majority, but perhaps more importantly, who is going to be the opposition voice to Labour in the House of Commons and in the country? Well, you may say to me, perhaps it'll be Sir Ed Davey, when he's not falling off logs or on kiddie slides or whatever he may be doing. But Ed Davey can't provide real opposition to a Labour government about which we know in terms of policy really precious little, because Ed Davey agrees with the Labour Party on most substantive issues. And it isn't going to be Rishi Sunak leading the opposition. I mean, he'll probably be in California anyway, and the Conservatives will choose someone, and they probably won't last very long, and they can't provide opposition because they are hopelessly split down the middle on policy. In fact, they've spent more of the last 4 years fighting each other than they have fighting for the interests of the country. And I'm putting it to you that I believe I can be that voice of opposition. I'm pretty clear and consistent in what I stand up for. I'm not afraid of a fight. I don't bow to Twitter pressure or the mob on the streets. I've taken on the European Union, I've taken on the big banks, and I'm pretty certain I can take on a Labour government headed by Keir Starmer that will have almost no honeymoon period whatsoever, will inherit some very, very deep problems, and I don't think has the radical solutions to sort the country out. So my message to the country is thank you, but come on, join the revolt. What have you got to lose? You've been so let down, frankly betrayed, by the Conservatives after their 2019 win, that it really is time for something new. We're excited about this. We've got up 9 pips in the polls over the course of the last 10 days. I don't know where this ends, but I do feel momentum, optimism is out there with us. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. So, that's the formal bit. Then we'll take some questions from the media. I think Chris just beat the two Chris's. Chris Hope just beat the Chris Mason in that race. Chris Hope.
Can I just ask, when you ask a question, then you might stand up for the camera.
Christopher Hope, GB News. Nigel Farage, we've been here before in 2015. You get all these votes piled up and 1 MP in 2015. What will change this time? And if you get maybe 4 MPs, as David Bull told GB News last night, and you're in second place, and the Tories are in third place, and they get 80 or 100 MPs, what does that say about our electoral system?
Well, first things first, Chris. We got 4 million votes. When I led UKIP in 2015, we got 4 million votes, and you're quite right, 1 seat. Never in the history of British elections had so many votes counted for so few seats. And I was deeply frustrated by it, and I'll admit, pretty wounded by it. I mean, wounded to the point where I pretty much said to myself, I never ever want to do this again. But here I am, back out of retirement again. We're not going to get 4 million votes. We're not going to get 5 million votes. We're going to get a very, very substantial number of votes. I genuinely think we can get over 6 million votes. I don't know where the ceiling is. But when you start to get through, I mean, think about the Liberal Democrats. Now, albeit they've got a much more developed ground game than we've got, and we know that, but the Liberal Democrats sort of went from 10 seats to 50 seats by just getting through that electoral threshold. Whether we get through it this time or not, I don't know. But remember, this is not a short-term commando raid. This is a 5-year commitment. This election is our first step towards building for 2029. So however many seats we win, you have my absolute assurance that our campaigning for the 29 election, our building of a big movement in this country, will begin the very next day, on July the 5th. If we did finish up with a huge number of votes and a paltry number of seats, do you know what it would do? It would tell us, yet again, that Britain is broken and Britain needs reform. And that reform includes the electoral system, that reform includes the abomination that is the House of Lords, and that reform includes the right, as people in Switzerland have, to call referendums on key issues if they think their government and parliament are out of touch with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Mason, BBC.
Thank you, Chris Mason, BBC News.
Mr. Farage, give us an insight into your dreams when you're at the shaving mirror in the morning. It's difficult, isn't it, for smaller parties to make an imprint in the House of Commons, however well you do, however popular you are. Are you dreaming of the moment of being the leader of the opposition, standing there at the dispatch box, potentially throwing questions at a Prime Minister Starmer if he wins?
Thank you. What I see in the shaving mirror every morning, looking back at me, I think, gosh, where have the last 40 years gone? You know, but there you are. I'm sure I'm not the only one in the room that has that sensation. Well, I tell you what, I led a group in the European Parliament for 15 years. I was in seat number 20 with Mr. Barroso and then Mr. Juncker, who wasn't always sure he was there himself, but never mind. So, you know, I'm quite used to getting up in big chambers and asking questions of the French President or British Prime Ministers. I have actually done all this before, albeit in a different theatre of operations, but if you're asking me, am I capable of doing it? Yes. And maybe somebody better than me comes along. Maybe the Conservative Party I think Penny Mordaunt was being lined up for it, but of course she's going to lose her seat, so that won't work. But if there's someone better than me to stand up there and provide opposition, then that's great. I'd be very, very happy if somebody younger, better than me comes along. But right at the minute, I do see myself as being that person. Yes, I do. And I have no confidence in the Conservative Party, as it currently is, to be even capable of providing opposition, so deep are the rifts within it. So, yeah, you know, I've made a huge decision. You know, as I say, I've come out of retirement. I'm in this for keeps.
Thank you very much, Chris. Henry Riley, LBC.
Thank you, Henry Riley from LBC. Did Dame Andrea Jenkins ask your permission to use a photograph of you on her leaflet? And since then, since you came back as leader, have any Conservative MPs, without naming them, I know you won't, have any of them texted you or called you?
Oh, gosh, never lie at a press conference. It's very, very important. Though Andrea didn't ask my permission, but she did send me a very nice text saying, what do you think? Well, it was a bit late by then, wasn't it, really? I think the fact that Andrea did that just shows you that depth of division that exists within the Conservative Party. I mean, they are two completely different parties, and I think they muddled along for decades, with the odd row here and there, obviously. I think Brexit is the thing that highlighted what those fundamental divisions were. And yes, you know, I mean, look, there are people in the Conservative Party that Richard and I feel politically aligned to, but they are in a very small minority. Of the 360 Conservative MPs that were elected in 2019, there's about 50, probably, that would take our view on many things in the world. The rest don't. And that was why, you know, when I went to the Conservative Party conference in Manchester last year, albeit with a GB News badge on, you know, I was hailed like a hero for the membership, but most of the MPs sort of walked past and couldn't even look at me because I'm so absolutely ghastly. And if as we go forward, we establish this bridgehead in Parliament, and the splits in the Conservative Party become ever wider, and I suspect my presence will perhaps even help to widen those splits, then some of those people that we like will be very, very welcome to come to us. It's as simple as that.
Now, I've got a new game for you as well, actually.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, if you look at Conservative MPs' leaflets, I want you to try and count up how many times you see the word Conservative. I've looked at half a dozen, and I never got beyond the number of 2, and that was just on the imprint. So it's pretty extraordinary what is going on, how the brand has become so toxic. Let's take a question just here.
Isn't the most realistic way of you becoming leader of the opposition after this election to join the Tories? And can you rule that out?
Boring, boring, boring. No, they're done. The brand's done.
You can rule out joining the Tories if you become an MP.
I thought it was very interesting. One of the polls at the weekend showed that 25% of 2019 Conservative voters want the party to get 0 seats. This isn't just a sort of change that happens election to election. This is a wholesale rejection by a significant number of Conservative voters who, by the way, if we weren't here, probably wouldn't vote for anybody, would stay at home. They are so disgusted with the political system. They feel absolutely betrayed by the promises that were made in 2019. The Conservative Party will not be in power for a decade, maybe more. And you know, you can say to me, well, look, they've been around for 190 years. But occasionally these big seismic shifts do happen. It happened in Britain in the 1920s. It happened in Canada in the early 1990s. I think this may well be one of those big 50 or 100-year events that happens, even under first past the post politics. I mean, if we were in PR, we'd be talking a very, very different game. So no, the brand's broken. It's gone. It's done.
Just on the right there, yes, yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up on something that you said in the debate last night about agreeing that the 2-child benefit cap should be scrapped. Should we expect that to be a Reform Party policy, or is that your personal opinion? And obviously that would add to the benefits bill. Are you both comfortable with that? Thank you.
Look, I just feel, and we feel, that actually support for families is really rather important. We should be encouraging people to have children. We should even, perhaps through the tax system, be encouraging marriage as well. I mean, my own track record on this is not great, I've got to tell you. But despite that, there is very strong evidence that kids that are brought up within a married environment do better in life. So do we believe as a party in encouragement for the family and the concept of the family? You bet your life we do. So it would be a policy? Yes.
Thank you. Cowgie, just behind, there we go, and then just here.
Hello. You say the Tories are divided, that's loud, isn't it? You say the Tories are divided, and that's certainly true. But during the next Parliament, the right will have to unite in some way, given the electoral system that we have. So are you confident that Leader of the Opposition, Nigel Farage, can unite the right against Labour by 2029?
Oh, I think so, yes. And I think, if people... Well, I mean, who knows how many Tory MPs there are going to be there anyway? You know, the number could be very small. And of course, you know, the other problem they've got, and you see this in the polls in the last week, is the Liberal Democrats are on the rise, and that reflects tactical voting that is going on certainly in southern, central southern and southwestern England. So who's to say how many MPs the Conservatives are even going to have? But look, you know, if the Damien Green and Jeremy Hunt wing want to go and join the Liberal Democrats, I'd have thought they'd be very, very at home there, frankly.
Just your right, yes. Gentleman, just to Chris's left. There we are, yeah. Thanks.
Hi. Hi, Mr. Farage. Emilio from Politico. The Conservatives are obviously trying to make this election about tax in terms of their dividing line with Labour. They're shouting about the fact that under Labour's plans, the tax burden as a percentage of GDP would rise to 37.4%. But they're being quieter about the fact that under the Conservative plans, it would rise to 36.8%, less than percentage different. Do you think that that is a Conservative-style tax plan? And I know you're launching your manifesto on Monday, or your contract on Monday.
Yeah.
Could you give us an idea, at least, of where that kind of number you would want it to be if it was a reform tax plan?
I mean, look, this argument that's going on over tax, and I've been in 2 of these debates with Angela Rayner and Penny Mordaunt. You're going to put taxes up. No, you're going to put taxes up more. I mean, mindless stuff. Quite how the Conservatives have got the front to say we're a low-tax party, having increased the tax burden to the highest level it's been since 1948, is completely and utterly beyond me. The answer is they're both going to put taxes up because they're going to freeze the thresholds. And that means dragging in. 40p was top rate from the late 1980s all the way through the Blair years. That was accepted as the top rate of tax. If you earned a lot of money, you paid 40p. And throughout that time, about 1.5 million people paid pretty consistently through that period of time. By the end of 2027, under current plans, 8 million people will be paying 40p tax. And that, to me, illustrates just what's happened, just where the tax burden's gone up in Britain. We've got a radical plan, very radical plan, to reduce the tax burden so that someone who's a staff nurse should not be paying 40p tax. So we would up that threshold to 70,000, which strikes us as being realistic, as a place where 40p kicks in. But more significantly, what we will be unveiling and explaining fully and talking about on Monday, and you're quite right, it's not a manifesto, because the word association with manifesto is lie, so we're not going to play that game. It'll be our contract, and it'll be what we're going to campaign for in opposition, the arguments that we're going to make in opposition. We're not pretending we're going to be in government. We're not. Not this time, anyway. So the radical plan is to raise the level at which people start paying tax to £20,000 a year. It'll be a mass simplification of a tax system. It will take many, many pensioners who, if they've got small private incomes, are now being dragged into the tax system, out of a tax system. It'll take a total of 7 million people completely out of tax. It'll mean fewer civil servants, isn't that good? But it'll also, more significantly, genuinely give those on benefits the incentive to go to work. And I think, sometimes we talk about people on benefits, and perhaps people use slightly pejorative term about those on benefits, when actually many are trapped, completely trapped. They go back to work, they work more than 16 hours, they start to lose in tax what they're gaining, they may as well just stay on benefits. And this is a real way to get people back to work, and if we do that and succeed with that, which we think, understanding human nature, as we believe we do that it will, that means less reliance on unskilled, cheap foreign labour. Now, I know the big employers will scream and shout because they become addicted to cheap foreign labour. So I think what we've got to say on tax is actually radical and genuinely interesting, and we will outline all of it on Monday.
Thank you. Only yesterday, it really is a very serious issue. I had 2 pensioners yesterday say, you give with the one hand where pensions go up, but all of a sudden it's all gone in tax. And you say, what's the point? It's a massive, massive issue. ITV.
On ITV News. I'll stand up under instruction. This is clearly a moment for your campaign. Are you ready to take advantage of this? Do you know where these voters are? Are you able to get your supporters out on polling day? Is your party in a state to capitalise on this moment?
It's a very good question. Not really. No, look, we're not as organised and as developed as the Liberal Democrats. They are very, very good at their ground game. They've got a network of councillors they've built up across the country. We're honest with you. We admit we're not in that position. So the way that we do it, and it's back really to Chris Hope's question right at the very beginning, the only way we can do this is we have to get the total number of votes well up over that 6 million figure, and if we do that, we will start to break through and win seats. So is there a ground game for us? Yes. Are people now coming forward enthusiastically to help us? Yes. Are people coming forwards and giving us 25 quid or more to join the party or support the party? Yes. Money is flowing in through the door. Support and help is coming in. Look, I'd have loved 6 months at this. I'd have loved 6 months at this, but we haven't got 6 months. We've got 3 more weeks. We're making the best of what we can, but I do think there's a very, very big gap in the electoral market out there. If none of the above was on the voting paper, quite a lot of people would have been tempted by that. I also think what we'll do is we'll bring people out to vote who the other parties can't reach anyway. because they will have been non-voters before. And a significant chunk of our vote already are people who otherwise would not vote. So look, are we fully in a position to capitalise from this? No. But are we doing our best as we go? Yes. And if we can win that really big mass audience, then I think we'll surprise even ourselves with how many seats we can win. Look, it's an if. Of course it is. Everything in an election is. But I do think momentum and trend is with us.
It's actually one of the saddest things you hear on the doors where people say, it's not worth it, it won't make a difference. This time round, actually, I think there is a sense of belief that it can make a difference, that it's a journey. It just feels very, very different to before. Yes, gentleman just there.
Thank you very much. Jochen Bittner, German news weekly Die Zeit. Mr. Farage, if you would allow a question from the German perspective. As you know, there is a similar party in Germany which manages to tap into the pool of disenfranchised voters who have left the Conservative Party and also the Social Democratic Party. Now, this party, the AfD, they have also grown very quickly. And they ran into the problem that a number of their candidates held views that were quite damaging to the party. So how do you want to prevent running into a similar problem?
No, it's a good question. I mean, the AfD, I knew the founders of the AfD and I saw them in the European Parliament. And of course, it was actually founded by academics who were really worried about Germany's place in the euro. And that was the main thing that got the party going. Yeah, look, they've had some real wrong-uns in the AfD, not at grassroots level, but at quite senior elected level, out in, well, as you know better than me, out in some of the Länder. All I can tell you is this. In my previous incarnation as leader of UKIP, I had an absolute rule that nobody who'd ever been part of the British National Party or any organisation like that could even be a member of the party, let alone a candidate. And I was absolutely ruthless about that. And I think because I did that, I would honestly say to you, I did more to destroy the British National Party as an electoral force in Britain than absolutely anybody else. And the same thing applies this time. And of course, because it's been a very rapidly called election, and because 450 of our candidates have never stood before, they're not sophisticated politicos, they will have liked things on Facebook with links to somebody else. It doesn't make them extreme right or far right. I don't want support from people like that. I've never had the support and worked with people like that. I never will support people like that. I'm as acutely aware of the problem. We are in a better place with all of that than the AfD. Of that I have no doubt. And yes, of course, we're going to have our problems with candidates, as every party is, with a very, very rushed election. But it's funny, really, even though there are 651 seats up for grabs in the Commons, in most of the United Kingdom, there are really only 3 names people are going to vote for. They're going to vote for Sunak, Starmer or Farage, and that's the reality.
Just there, hi.
Hi, Sophie Huskisson from the Daily Mirror. So lots of people obviously got to see you again on I'm a Celebrity last year.
Lots of me, yeah.
Your former campmate, Fred Sirius, has said that after spending 3 weeks with you in the jungle, he doesn't think that you have a vision and he thinks that you just rant. What's your response to that?
Jolly good, Fred. Happy birthday.
Just at the front here, yes.
Thank you very much.
The Sun newspaper. I want to ask you a question that's been put to you in Dover and a question that's been put to you in Clacton, and both times you've sort of batted it away rather speculatively. But now, as you say, the inflection point has happened. It might be one you're slightly more happy to answer. And that is, how many seats do you think you can get, or how many seats are you targeting? And if you won't give us a straight number, if the ballot box gods came down from the sky on July 4 and say, Nigel Farage, you can win in Clacton on seat, but that is it, there is one Reform MP in Parliament. Is that a deal you would take, or would you chance your arm with the electorate?
Oh no, if you gave me a chance now to say, would I take Clacton and nothing else, I'd say no. Absolutely not. We will win many more seats than Clacton. How many? Well, perhaps I can be more specific now than I've been before with you. I've literally got no idea. I don't know. I haven't got a clue.
What's your target?
I haven't got a target. I'm travelling optimistically, doing the best I can, building what's going to become a very, very big mass movement over the course of the next 5 years. Just you watch.
Just hear it.
Thanks, Camilla Long, Sunday Times. Nigel, leading on from the last question, are we to take it then that Clacton is not enough for you?
Clacton is not enough. That I will agree with, yes.
What are you going to do for the people of Clacton?
Do what I do and have done for many, many years when I was an MEP. You know, it's quite interesting. If I write a letter to banks or authorities or people with whom constituents have problems, they generally jump up and start to do things. So I do think I could be a champion for local people who've got problems with, you know, they might be running their own business or whatever it is, and I can do that for them. But, you know something? Clacton is at the end of the line. It's the terminus. It can be easily forgotten. And it would be accurate to say that, of course, it has had some levelling up money, that's true. But kind of once levelling up money is spent, that's sort of it, really. You get a few pretty new buildings or whatever it may be. What I would hope to do, can't promise, what I'd hope to do as a national figure is attract some genuine business investment into the constituency. There are parts of that constituency that are genuinely really pretty hard up. You know, cost of living crisis, energy bills, things like that. It's very, very real indeed. And yet, there are 2 or 3 world-class engineering firms operating from within that constituency. If I can help showcase that and get more investment for them, I will have done my job as their representative. As I say, it would be foolish of me to guarantee I can do it, but I will damn well try.
Lady just there with a hand up.
Rowena Mason from The Guardian. What number of seats would make you feel happy to wake up having won on election morning? You said Clacton's not enough. If you got, say, 10, would you feel happy and satisfied by that? And secondly, has Reform got enough money to fight an election on this sort of nationwide scale, given you can see that the major parties, the Tories and Labour, are spending sort of £35 million each?
I said earlier that money was coming in every day in small 25 quids, and we'll raise, we will raise £2 to £3 million in 25 quids, and that's great. But the real answer to your question, and I can be more direct on the second part of your question than the first, the real answer is, right at the moment, we do not have the ammunition that we need, and we're going to need for the establishment counter-attack that I expect to begin from the Labour Party as well, pretty imminently. So, no, we do need to raise money, a lot of money, very, very quickly, and that's something we're going to be focused on very heavily for the course of the next few days. So, yeah, we are the underdogs. We are the underdogs in every sense, and we haven't had much time to really get ready for this election. So, no, we do. I would admit a weakness there. We do need to raise a lot of money and do it very, very quickly indeed. We're trying. We genuinely are trying. How many seats would make me happy? I refer to the previous answer to the Sun newspaper. I have no idea. We're on a journey. We've got momentum. Let's see where it goes. All right, great. Is that
good? I think that's it. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. Thanks for coming. Really appreciate it. And we will see you very, very soon.
Good. Well done.
Great.